Hi, I'm Schuyler. By the time I was 2, I was already speaking 2 languages. At the time, that was just me. Now I'm 13, bilingual, and a student at VIS. I grew up in Taiwan, but how did I get here? What led to me being here? Well, my parents are here, my mom's from here. But then why is my father here? What choices led him here? What did he have to give up? I'm here to find out. Where he grew up was very different from where I'm used to.
I grew up in what I now realize was a very small town. At the time, that was just what childhood was like, and I had no idea about how big the world actually was. The town that I grew up in was about 6,000 people.
For perspective, 6,000 people is about the population of just one section of the road I live on in New Taipei City. Just one intersection.
The other thing that made my childhood different and unique is also about the town, is that it was the worldwide headquarters for Fisher-Price Toys. Fisher-Price Toys was founded in East Aurora, and the headquarters, and while I was growing up, they even had a factory making toys in the town, in the village. And that meant that it was the major employer in the area.
Fisher-Price is a children's toy company. In 1980s, it became one of the largest toy brands in the world, specializing in educational and inspirational playthings. And where were those toys made? Well, at first the factory was in that same hometown, but eventually in Hong Kong, which meant frequent visits from my grandfather. My father was inspired to travel by my grandparents, who had lived in Brazil and Costa Rica before my dad was born, to go to see the world for himself.
The next big memory about travel was when I was 14 in high school. I went with 4 other kids in my Spanish class for 3 weeks exchange study with a school in Malaga, Spain, in southern Spain on the Costa del Sol. And what was memorable about that trip is we got there and we were supposed to spend 3 weeks going to high school with other high school. It turned out to be the Holy Week, La Semana Santa. And so we went to class for a week and then spent the next 2 weeks where everybody sleeps until the middle of the day, and then they have parades through the streets in the middle of the day, and then the whole city parties all night. Big travel after that, in my junior year in college, after studying Chinese for 2 semesters and being universally terrible at it, I decided to study abroad, but not follow my classmates to go learn Chinese in a classroom in Beijing at Beida. I decided to go with the School for International Training to do something called experiential learning in Yunnan province. And so, having made that decision, I spent the next 6 months traipsing all over at the time, very rural China, learning about the Shaoshuminzu. And then in graduate school and afterwards, I've been coming to Taiwan, and then I moved to Taiwan, and then I've traveled to Japan and continue to travel to China for business, and Thailand and Australia, and haven't been to Africa yet though. That's still on the list. Yeah, lots of reasons to travel. Travel is awesome.
Traveling's not the same as moving, so how exactly did he end up living in Taiwan for almost 20 years? He had just finished business school when he met my mom. Back then, my mom already found her dream job in Taiwan, but for my dad, he had 2 choices. He could either go work in New York or follow her to Taiwan.
And I was musing over what the difference would be and whether there was really any decision at all. I sat down in a pub with a friend of mine, and I asked him, just as an aside, what would he do? And he said, I'm a writer, and I look for opportunities to tell stories, and I ask myself, when I have a decision like this to make, what was going to make the better story later in life. And at that moment, I knew it was pretty clear. Only one of those two choices was going to make better stories later in life, and that was trying and coming to Taiwan.
Taiwan, that's where my story starts. I'm still growing, still deciding, and still learning about who I am. But now I know more about where I came from, and maybe that'll help me figure out what I'm gonna do with my life.